Welcome. This is a Snohomish County League of Women Voters Forum. Today's forum features candidates for Representative Position 1 in Legislative District 32. I'm Nadine Shanti. I'm a member of the League. This forum is being live streamed to our League YouTube channel. To those of the virtual space, thank you for joining us. Let me provide some background on the position of Washington State Representative. Members of the legislature enact and reject legislation affecting public policy in the state, provide for the levy and collection of taxes and other revenue to support state government and assist local government, and they appropriate funds for these purposes. The House is made up of 98 members, 2 from each legislative district in the state. The total membership of the House is up for election each even-numbered year. This is a partisan office, and candidates may declare a party affiliation. It is the policy of the League to be nonpartisan. Therefore, we neither endorse nor oppose candidates or parties. Legislative District 32 includes the cities of Linwood and Edmonds in Snohomish County and Shoreline in King County. Candidates for Legislative District 32, Representative Position 1, are Cindy Ryu and Lisa Rezac. The rules for participation in this forum were sent ahead of time to the candidates, and they have agreed to follow them. I will pose the questions and will clearly state the amount of time allowed for each answer. We are using a countdown timer visible to all candidates, and time limits on answers will be strictly enforced. The order for the first question was chosen randomly and will be Cindy Ryu, then Lisa Rezac. I will then alternate candidates in the starting position to ensure a fair sequence. So let's begin. Candidates will have 90 seconds each to respond to the first 2 questions. We'll start with Ms. Ryu. What are the major issues you feel need to be addressed by this office? And please explain why you are focusing on these issues.
Yes. Thank you so very much for that question. I believe for the 2025 session, we will be obviously working on our biannual budget, and our budget outlook is not that great. And so it will be a challenge, but we must balance our budget. And as you know, our state constitution mandates that we provide funding for our common schools, which are the public schools. So that's number 1. Number 2, I believe that we must make sure that we are ready for the FIFA 2026 games happening in Seattle, 6 games, and nearby in Vancouver, BC, there'll be 7 more games. So between the 2 nations nearby within our jurisdictions, we will have the opportunity of being able to have the world's eyes on us, but at the same time have to deal with or plan way ahead for the challenges of hosting a world-class event, once in a lifetime event such as the World Cup. So those are just 2 of many issues that I expect we will be addressing in the 2025 session.
Thank you. Ms. Rezac, same question.
Hi, thank you. Hi, first I want to say thank you, Nadine, and to the rest of the League of Women Voters team for making this opportunity possible. These kinds of forums are so important, and I just want to say thank you for doing this. So the top 3 issues that I'm looking, that I see that we need to address are going to be to reduce crime, lower the cost of living, and to improve our health and well-being. I've actually been out talking to people in my district. I've visited businesses up and down Aurora. I've been out canvassing and doorbelling and talking to people, and they are just absolutely fed up with the decline of our really once safe and beautiful area. Crime is absolutely out of control. Over the summer, I actually put together a town hall on crime, because in the North Seattle area, there were, I think, 36 shootings in 31 days. And unfortunately, our part of Aurora, drug trafficking and prostitution is what we're known for, and that's really embarrassing. So second, the cost of living, want to address that, is an issue for everyone right now. We're taxed here, we're taxed there, we're taxed everywhere. And the answer is not adding more taxes, but to leave more money in people's pockets to spend at their discretion, not the government's. Lastly, health and wellness of the average American is at an all-time low. Obesity, cancer, and diabetes, along with neurological illnesses like dementia and autism, are plaguing our communities. We need somebody to be an advocate for our health and well-being, and that is what I intend to do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Rezac, we'll stay with you for the second question. What qualifications and experience make you a good choice to address these issues?
Yeah. So what qualifies me to address these issues is, one, that I live in the district and I too am suffering from the effects of, unfortunately, what is bad policies. Last week, my husband and I were woken to the sound of gunfire twice in 1 week. I've lived in this area almost the entirety of my life. I'm part of this community. My son goes to school here. We work and live here, and I've never felt so unsafe in my life. And we all deserve to feel safe. So I am very motivated to make some changes. Second, I got involved in politics 4 years ago on a grassroots level. In 2021, I worked in grassroots education, trying to working on legislation around charter schools. In 2022, I then worked for the Washington State Republican Party as a regional field director, and I am currently the LD chair for the GOP and am on the King County GOP Executive Board. Lastly, in my professional life, I've led over 125 charitable team building events and trainings where we gave back to the community and helped organizations build strong relationships and improve their communication. So I would bring all of that team and relational and communication experience to the legislature to work on these things like the budget, like Cindy mentioned, and to build strong relationships and then work together on these issues that we're all facing.
Thank you. Ms. Ryu, same question.
Yes, thank you. I have lived in 4 of the 6 cities that I represent since 1976. And I served as the state representative the last 14 years. And I believe I have a successful track record, including chairing a couple of different committees. Right now, I chair the Innovation, Community, and Economic Development Committee, which also includes veterans, broadband, telecommunications, as well as tourism. And thank you for supporting me all these years. Obviously, I'm going for re-election to my 8th term. Before my state representative role, I also served a term as a city council member and mayor of the city of Shoreline. And as you may recall, the city of Shoreline was pretty new in those days. It's only 29 years old. And we were very successful at making sure that 3 miles of Aurora Avenue was redeveloped, and it is very functional, as well as now we are able to basically open the 4 stations in the 4 light rail stations in the Linwood 1 line from north end of Seattle, just north of Seattle, all the way up to Linwood successfully. And so that we could ride it all the way to the airport if we were going on a trip without having to drive all the way down to the airport.
Thank
Okay,
you.
I'm out of time.
Thank you. Timer, please note that candidates will have 60 seconds for this next series of questions and adjust the clock. Ms. Ryu, we'd like to start with you. This legislative session will enact the 2025 to 2027 biennial budget. If elected, what will be your funding priorities?
So number 1, our funding priorities have to be our schools. Obviously, we have not done as good a job as we should be. And I believe that we will not have the room to pay for vouchers or charter schools. Instead, we must absolutely concentrate on public schools. I'm a product of public schools in Washington State, and as are each of our 3 children. And I believe, as an immigrant, I believe public schools are one way of leveling the basically giving an opportunity for everyone to succeed. And so I'll be supporting schools. We also have other programs that support those who are mentally ill or have physical health issues. And so we must take care of those that need the most from our resources.
Thank you. Ms. Rezac, your funding priorities.
Yeah, I think with this question, the first thing we need to do is we need to answer this question, we need to step back one step, and that is that to point out that there's this constant narrative that we don't have enough money, and that is just flat out not true. The state operating budget has more than doubled in the last 10 years, and yet net population has only grown by 14% in that same period. So the state does not have a revenue problem. It has a spending problem. Over the last 5 years, the state has operated with a $19 billion surplus. So my first priority with this is to get clear on what our priorities are and to quit misallocating our funds. These priorities, though, would be then education, transportation, and infrastructure, as they are all currently failing at this time.
Thank you. Ms. Rezac, what actions would you take or what policies would you endorse, if any, to address homelessness in your district?
Yeah. So I'm opposed to using public funds to subsidize shelters and housing for drug and prostitution dens that only expand crime in our community. 85% of crime comes from addicts committing crimes to pay for their fix. I cannot understand why this is not understood and why we are subsidizing spreading crime all over our county. The homeless need help, not to further enable their problems, their dysfunction, and the worsening of their condition, which then ultimately negatively impacts the cost, the safety, and the functions of our community. I speak from personal experience. I live a block and a half away from a no-barrier permanent housing called North Star, and the crime and prostitution has dramatically increased since it opened. There are people nodding off outside those doors every single day. We have to have a level of accountability, the people we are giving this housing to, and how we are spending taxpayers' money to help the homeless. My
Thank
policy
you.
is treatment first, not housing first. Thank you,
Thank
Nadine.
you. Ms. Ryu.
Yes, I believe that housing first is the right approach, especially to make sure that we are not pushing those at the edge of economic situation where they're spending way more than a third of their income on housing, because when it goes into 40 or 50% of their income to make sure that they're housed, it is not sustainable. And so I will be supporting increasing the supply of housing. We have a housing shortage of at least 250,000 units. And within the next 2 or 3 decades, if we keep up the same rate of population increase and yet the same slow rate of new housing unit construction, we will be behind by almost 1 million units. And so we must take care of that housing first, and so that we may provide stability so that more services could be provided effectively.
Thank you. Ms. Ryu, we'll stay with you for this question. You mentioned public school education. What policy and funding changes would you make, if any, related to public school education? And how would these changes improve the quality of education?
So one approach that I've asked for, but I don't think we have the votes, is to give local schools the option to go to the ballot and ask the voters whether we may have special assessments, special levies. And unfortunately, we've taken the approach that if King County schools or even Snohomish County schools are given that option, then other counties that cannot pass their special levies would have to be somehow given extra funding, and we absolutely don't have that kind of options. if we were to be able to increase revenue for our schools in the 32nd LD, I believe it will not only ensure that our teachers are compensated appropriately, but also that other non-core but absolutely necessary programs such as music and after-school programs are
Thank you, Ms. Thank you, Ms. Ryu. Ms. Rezac, same question.
Yes, first off, once again, the funding isn't the problem with the schools. One problem is that we're failing to meet the standards and proficiency levels with the basics of reading, writing, and math. We need to restore quality curriculum to teach our kids critical thinking skills through true history, civics, and classic learning. Our schools have gotten too far away from these basic principles, distracting and confusing our children with issues that should not be a part of the educational system. Back to the funding issue. First, start with cutting the bloat. I'll just say it right there, work on the budget. In the Seattle School District, it's up to $23,000 per child per year. And I just heard that the Seattle School District superintendent just gave himself a raise to $480,000. At the same time, they're proposing to close 20 schools. So, and the situation is that if this was just one school district across the state that was not managing their budget and not meeting standards, then I'd say we need to look at the funding. But this is a statewide issue telling me that we're putting the blame on the wrong spot.
Thank you. Ms. Rezac, what environmental legislation or regulation, if any, is a priority for you?
Thank you. There's a lot of issues with overregulation regarding the environment, which is driving up the cost of everything right now. Some of these regulations are linked to increased forest fires and flooding through a lack of forest management and dredging of the rivers. However, I do believe that a good place to start is passing the two initiatives that relate directly to the environment. One is the I-2117, which is stopping the hidden gas tax, and I-2066, which is stopping the ban on natural gas. So voting yes on those initiatives is a really great start.
Thank you. Ms. Ryu, your thoughts?
Yes, my priorities are that we must deal with climate change. Global warming is real. Our winters are, sometimes we do get freezing weather, but our winters are not as cold as before. We don't get the snowpacks that we need to carry us through the summer. Our summers are so dry, except for this year. Over the last 10 years, we've had conflagrations, wildfires. I mean, something that happened in Lahaina can happen in Western Washington. And so we must address global warming directly. And I disagree with my opponent that we adopt the two initiatives because lawmaking by initiatives doesn't work that well. And by the way, we negotiated the carbon tax very well. And so I will be voting no, and I encourage everyone to vote no on both initiatives.
Thank you. Ms. Ryu, is there an idea or a position from a political party different from your own that you think is worth considering? Please tell us.
It's not the current GOP, but the old GOP used to be a lot more fiscally responsible. And so I happen to be fiscally responsible, especially as an MBA in operations management, not finance, from the University of Washington, that we need to be very careful with, especially with other people's money, such as tax revenue or even fees. And so that the old GOP I guess stance I would agree with, but as we know, the current GOP has not been fiscally responsible. And so that probably would be at the top of my mind.
Thank you. Ms. Rezac, your thoughts on this question?
No, I think that's great feedback that if we're not being fiscally responsible, then that's exactly where I want to go to work too, because that's my number one, my thing, right? But I would say as far as regarding the Democrat Party, is there something worth considering? I mean, yes, I would say in the past, but unfortunately not now. You know, things used to work. Like I said, you know, Seattle was once beautiful, safe, and economically thriving. People were doing well, things were good. Our school system was one of the best in the country. I was a voting Democrat and an active Democrat for 25 years. The policies used to be good, but now I'm waking up to gunshots outside my window. And I'm going to say this, and my son literally thinks it's normal to have naked women selling themselves in front of Lowe's. We didn't change, but the policies certainly have. And the GOP hasn't had a legislator in Seattle in, I think, over 20 years, and certainly not a governor in 40.
Thank you. Ms. Rezac, how satisfied were you with the most recent Washington State redistricting process? Are there any changes to the process that you would recommend?
I think just pretty succinctly, I was not very happy with the redistricting. I do feel that it was purely partisan. I really don't have much more to say on that. I know that there was a legislator and a Latina, that there was really some issues with that. And just with all the things I'm working on, I wasn't able to really dive down into that. So that is the entirety of my answer, just that I didn't really like the way things went with that.
Thank you. Ms. Ryu, your thoughts?
Yes, unlike some other states, our redistricting commission has 4 representatives, I guess, commissioners from each corner of the legislature, which means 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans. And the chair is a non-voting member unless she or he needs to break the tie. And so I believe it is a very fair process. Each of the caucuses, 4 caucuses, Democrats and Republicans, meaning 2 major parties, which right now and for the foreseeable future probably will be the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. And so even though they are not representative of the people, voters of Washington State, because if it was a representative, just like the House of Representatives or even the Senate, then there should be a lot more Democrats than Republicans. So having 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans, I believe is overly fair.
Thank you. Ms. Ryu, what will you do, if anything, to support a vibrant economy in your district?
I am working on economic development as well as community development, and it has to come from the grounds up. It's about the small business owners who provide 85% of jobs. Of course, we have major employers, but outside of a district. So I, as a former chamber president of Shoreline Chamber of Commerce, I absolutely believe that small businesses should be paid attention to, which I do pay attention, especially as the chair of the committee that includes community and economic development. Specifically, I'm working on tourism, especially because there's a huge opportunity coming our way in the next couple of years. And besides the World Cup, there's other opportunities because Washington State is an attractive place to start businesses and to visit. And so I would consider marketing and making our economy as welcoming as possible.
Thank you. Ms. Rezac, same question. You're muted. Thank you.
Thank you. And this is with supporting a vibrant economy.
Yes.
Yes.
Would you like for
So-
me to repeat the question?
No, that's good. Thank
Okay.
you. So like I said at the beginning, we're being taxed here, there, everywhere, and up and down and backwards. So these are the current taxes that I count. We've got sales tax, property tax, the gas tax through the Climate Commitment Act, B&O on businesses, capital gains, the Washington CARES, and any levies. That's like 7 ways we're being taxed. So I would certainly take a look at all these taxes. Second, I would reverse some of the taxes by voting yes on the initiatives to repeal those unfair taxes and not doing what they said they were intended to do. I would promote manufacturing throughout the state, bring that back. I would look at regulations on new building and how those regulations are driving up the cost of building. And then lastly, I'd see if there's a way to prevent investment firms like BlackRock from buying up homes and driving up the cost.
Okay.
So that would help with things as well.
Thank you. You both have mentioned some of the initiatives that are on our upcoming ballot, and we'd like to give you an opportunity to expound on that if you'd like. You will have 30 seconds to respond about each initiative, and we'll take them one at a time, very quick. We'll start with you, Ms. Rezac. Do you support or oppose Initiative 2109, which would repeal the capital gains excise tax imposed on long-term capital assets of individuals with capital gains over $250,000? 30 seconds.
Yes, thank you. Vote yes, pay less. I support the passing of 2109 to repeal the capital gains tax. This will also stop the legislators' plan to institute an income tax for earners at every level, which, by the way, is exactly what Cindy said she wants to do. She said this to me in another interview. She said she wants to eliminate the B&O tax because she wants a statewide income tax.
Thank you. Ms. Ryu?
I oppose. Yes, thank you. I oppose Initiative 2109 because the capital gains excise tax is on long-term capital gains by individuals that have a gain of $250,000 in a single year. There are not that many of us that will be paying that tax, certainly not me. And so this is targeted for people who can absolutely afford to pay their capital gains tax. And so please vote no. I oppose this initiative.
Thank you. Ms. Ryu, do you support or oppose Initiative 2117, which would prohibit carbon tax credit trading and repeal provisions of the 2021 Washington Climate Commitment Act, the CCA?
I oppose Initiative 2117 because this bill was negotiated a lot in order for us to take the first step toward addressing global warming. And this is because if we don't do this, we'll be paying for it in many different ways, including not just global warming, but wildfires increasing and us having a lot more losses.
Thank you. Ms. Rezac, Initiative 2117.
Yes. Vote yes, pay less. Repeal the Climate Commitment Act, which does nothing to curb carbon emissions. They haven't been able to say that it's done anything. It has increased gas prices by nearly 50 cents, though. And I think one of their arguments is that by repealing this, it takes away money for schools. In my interview with the Seattle Times, they said, then you don't want to support schools. And I thought that that was odd because this is supposed to go towards the climate. So the truth of this tax is that it goes to a slush fund, meaning that it doesn't necessarily go to anything that helps the climate. So that's why I want to repeal it.
Thank you. And Ms. Rezac, do you support or oppose Initiative 2124, which allows all employees and self-employed individuals to opt out of the long-term services insurance program?
Yes. Once again, vote yes, pay less. People need the opportunity to opt out of something that they don't want to pay into because they're not going to use it. And also, I just want to mention, and it's currently insolvent, by the way. And I also want to mention I-21066. Did I get that right? It's the one to stop the natural gas ban. This was a bad policy pushed through at 2 a.m. And so we want to stop the state from forcing homeowners to spend tens of thousands of dollars to convert their homes to all electric.
Thank you. Ms. Ryu, Initiative 2124.
Yes, I mean, vote no. I oppose Initiative 2124. I've worked in long-term care when I was a student as a nursing assistant. Long-term care is very expensive. As an insurance agent, I tried to sell long-term care policies. Unfortunately, they're not that available and they're very expensive. And many companies that used to offer them do not offer them anymore. So the private market option is not available. And so I support the policy, vote no on 2124.
Thank you. At this time, you may ask the other candidate a question on anything she stated in today's forum. Each candidate has 30 seconds to ask the question. Opponent will have 60 seconds to respond, and we'd like to start with Ms. Ryu. Do you have a question for Ms. Rezac on something you heard tonight?
Ms. Rezac, what numbers do you have that shows that public safety is out of control in Seattle?
What numbers do I have that public safety is out of control? Well, let's see. I mean, it's that one thing I said earlier that there was 36 shootings in 31 days. I mean, I look at the headlines and I know that I'm hearing gunshots. My neighbors and I are talking about it. So, I mean, it's just happening. That's when I go up and talk to the businesses and they're having their businesses broken into all the time. I see it. That's my statistic, is that it's there. I hear it. I see it. I'm talking about it. I see it on the news every single day. I mean, unfortunately, there was that man that killed that 80-year-old dog walker over in Madison Square area. You didn't hear about that? Sorry, I just saw your face, Nadine. It was like he had been let out several times and he was carjacking a woman. She was a dog walker and I hate to say it, he viciously murdered her. It's on the news all the time. So that's my statistics.
Thank you. Ms. Rezac, do you have a question for Ms. Ryu on something you heard this evening?
Yeah, I guess Cindy, you said that your credentials are that you're an expert in economics and business. And you even said it today, you mentioned that the committees, you have the finance committee that you're on. So you're talking about how you need to manage the budget and stuff like that. But have you ever talked about or considered where you need to cut or where we need to cut?
I don't believe I said I was an expert. I do have an MBA in operations management from the University of Washington's Foster School of Business. And I have run a business as an insurance agent and also as a commercial real estate, landlord. And then also my experience, not expertise necessarily, because I rely on many other experts, but my experience as the Shoreline Chamber president.
The question
Thank
was, have you ever considered where you need to cut?
Oh, I would like to cut funding of charter schools.
Thank you. We've come to your final question, and it is this, and we'd like to start with Ms. Rezac. Nope, we're going to start with Ms. Ryu. Please tell us something about your life experience that might surprise or intrigue voters.
Sure. I believe I mentioned that I'm an immigrant. I was born in South Korea, but my parents are from what is now North Korea. And so after the Korean War armistice, it is technically still at war. They could not go home. Neither of them could go home. And so my dad had to go work overseas because the pay was much better, because South Korea in those days was much poorer than North Korea because they didn't have the infrastructure that North Korea had. And so after a few years, fortunately, he sent us plane tickets to join him in Brunei. So as a fourth grader, I had to be rooted up. I hated to move, but we were relocated to Brunei, and then we had to keep moving until we ended up in Washington State. And of course, I love it. And now I love to travel, which is amazing.
Thank you. Ms. Rezac, same question.
Yes, I feel like I've said a lot about things, but I guess, that I was born and raised here in Edmonds, Washington. I went to school, but also that I lived in New York City for 10 years. And I got to see a really large city, really thriving in a lot of different ways. And, just really bringing all the pieces together of a really dense metropolis and thriving at the same time. Yeah, I guess also that just, I really, in spite of everything that we're seeing, I really feel that I feel a lot of optimism, and that this is an opportunity for us to get to the bottom of some things that aren't working, and to be able to shift them and start going in a direction that's going to work for everybody.
Thank you. The League thanks these candidates for joining us and for running for office. We encourage you to explore additional information about these and all candidates. Recordings of our forums, including forums from the primary election, are available on the League of Women Voters of Snohomish County website and our YouTube and podcast channels. Find links at lwvsnoho.org. Vote411.org, sponsored by the League, is another good source of information. The Snohomish County voter pamphlet is being mailed now, so watch for that. Ballots will be mailed starting October 17th, and Election Day is Tuesday, November 5th. Please be a voter. Thank you to our League Candidate Forum team, and special thanks to Dave Moon and the Sultan School students at turkpride.tv who made this live stream possible. And of course, thank you all for joining us. This concludes our Candidate Forum.